So Ryan Lizza has reported that the Culinary Workers Union has put out a very smelling salt statement. We can't believe, basically, I don't know if we can find it. Ryan Lizza put this out just a couple of hours ago. Ryan Lizza, in fact, you could also find the Elizabeth Warren tweet first, which is on the top of my timeline. Basically, the Culinary Workers Union is complaining that there were some Bernie people online that have been rude to them. And, this is, of course, the primary issue of the campaign. Can we find that tweet? It's on the top of my line. I quote tweet it. But before we even get to Warren, we'll get to Warren in a second, but let's read this statement from the Culinary Workers Union. Okay. We have welcomed Senator Sanders into our union town hall with culinary workers, and we hosted the tours of the Culinary Health Center and Culinary Academy of Las Vegas with Senator Sanders to show what we have fought for and won. Our union believes that everyone has a right to good health care, and health care should be a right, not a privilege. We have already enacted a vision of what working people need and exists now. Workers should have a right to choose to keep their health care. Culinary union members have built for and sacrificed for and went on strike for 6 years, 4 months, and 10 days to protect. It's disappointing that Senator Sanders supporters have viciously attacked the culinary union and working families in Nevada simply because our union has provided facts on what certain healthcare prospects might take away from our system of care built for over 8 decades. And it goes on. Now, I'll get to the Warren thing in a second because this is obviously another just absolutely despicable, malevolent manifestation of that campaign. But let's be a little tactical here. We know from the beginning that whether it's Working Families Party not being transparent about their process, journalists getting called on their biased or in some cases even defamatory coverage, and now the Culinary Workers Union, that there's always going to be this passive-aggressive bullshit game with Sanders supporters. And there's always going to be either let's take somebody who has 15 followers and blow that up into a big thing, even though we have, surrogates on national television defaming Sanders. We all know the inbuilt double standards and biases. I will say that the Culinary Workers Union, this is different. I think we've gotten to the point where people recognize that some MSNBC person, throwing a tantrum, Chris Matthews having his, whatever's going on with him mentally and emotionally is one thing. This is still a group of people. These are union workers. I don't trust their leadership for a second. And again, anybody who's fighting against single-payer healthcare is objectively the enemy of the 99% of working people. That's just reality. There's no way of sugarcoating that. But you've got to be very tactical about how you engage with a group that, at least in name, represents, and to some real extent represents, real and actual workers. Knowing that, of course, everything, including just valid criticisms, will be lied about and distorted. So this is the thread that Sanders supporters need to do right now. And it's going to be a balance, because I think there's some people that are going to say it's all bullshit, it's all disingenuous, so just keep doing your thing online. It doesn't really matter anyways. I think there's a lot of truth to that, frankly. I also think that there is a small segment of people who really are affected by these things. How affected you should be by these things is frankly a different debate, which I think we got to have. I think the idea that you would refuse to vote to give every single human being in this country health care because somebody was rude online is frankly profoundly narcissistic and disturbing. But I also get that we're living in the world as it is. And just as Li Fang made some excellent points about some of the kind of, broader signifying that the Sanders campaign needs to make, which I agree with him on 100%. And just as people went clean for Gene back in 68, there's some truth that putting in some effort to, at the very least, when these people are exposed for being dishonest and disingenuous, showing the process by which they've been, because that's actually done some work, right? When you started having exchanges where people could say, hey, could you just give me some numbers to back up this dishonest claim you're making about Sanders? And then people say, typical Bernie bro. that looked good for some other people looking on the outside because they started to realize, like, okay, of course, literally anything that Sanders or his supporters say is going to be lied about. So you have to play into that to some extent. Now, on the other hand, look, the rhetoric of unity has mostly just been a manipulative, disingenuous game to try to destroy Bernie Sanders, used by manipulative and disingenuous people. So you still have to be really hard about that. And I'll just say right now, a clear example is, the Warren campaign. If you're an Elizabeth Warren supporter of good faith who, whatever reason you preferred her, maybe, maybe we just have different politics. You're more to the right on domestic and foreign policy. That's great. I'd like to encourage you, if you care about some of these issue sets, to come to the front runner and come to the only viable path of winning these things. And I really hope, honestly, and I know I failed in this, that whoever you are, whether you're Warren or Yang or Gabbard or really anybody, I really don't believe, I don't think we should be electorate blaming people. We need to build enough of a coalition that it's going to include people who voted for Donald Trump. So I really, really hope, and I know I failed in that, and this is where I would say it's not about, the average voter for anybody. Now, am I going to be manipulated into not criticizing Elizabeth Warren as an example? Absolutely not. She's running a destructive, manipulative campaign, and it's absolutely clear that she is not part of some type of progressive effort. Her primary focus now, with absolutely no prospects of winning the nomination, is to try to damage Bernie Sanders as much as possible. Now, go back to this tweet. She quote tweets the culinary worker statement. Now, let's be really clear. This is not even a, hey, let's all be civil, unity, blah, 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 but universal health care is actually really important. She's completely done on this. A lot of people some folks got very upset with me that I said what I thought was quite obvious several months ago, which is that she's not committed to single payer. If she came out right out of the gate with the first version of her, two-part plan, which is more generous than what Buttigieg or Biden are offering, that would be fine. We would disagree with it because we really need to solve this problem for everybody. But we could say, okay, that's a more liberal plan than Biden or Buttigieg. But she insisted on playing this game about single payer for several months. Now look at this statement. No one should attack Culinary 226 and its members for fighting hard for themselves and their families. Like them, I want to see every American get high-quality, affordable health care, and I'm committed to working with them to achieve that goal. So what she's doing is continuing on the path of trying to distort the Sanders campaign, belittle his supporters, and is not saying. Several months ago, she might have said, I understand that you're scared, and the messaging I'm going to give you is that maybe you have to worry with him doing it because he doesn't have a plan or whatever, but I have a plan, so it'll be fine. Okay? She's not doing that. She's taking a aggressively anti-single payer statement, using it as an opportunity to get a cheap bullshit shot off at Sanders and his supporters, and then going into the type of vague, vacuous statement about healthcare you hear from Buttigieg or anybody else. So I'm not going to stop making those criticisms about a highly powerful human being who's running for president of the United States. If that leads you to not be able to vote for Bernie Sanders, I can't get that. I can't get into that mindset. I voted for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump because of things like the Iran deal or people like the Dreamers. And I was not upset about, stupid statements that Clinton functionaries made about the left, although they certainly made many. I was upset about, Hillary Clinton, as an example, destroying Haiti. So I simply cannot, I cannot get into the mindset of my vote is my tantrum. But I will say, and if that specifically is your perspective, I mean, look, you'll get, I can't pretend. You won't get anything from me. I don't care. I don't have any respect for that. If you are legitimately in a different place politically, I hope I can persuade you to come on board. Candidates are a completely different thing. Now, and they're a thing that if Warren was starting to say, hey, I'm with Bernie, the message is the same. I would still be saying I don't see what the point of you being in the race is, but I've been honest. I don't see the point of her being in the race from the beginning. We had one clear left option. But I've not been afraid to praise and give credit where credit is due for anyone while supporting a candidate, because this is a choice among candidates. So I don't know. I feel like maybe I've made that more complicated than necessary. There is profit in not being overly aggressive and hostile at times, certainly not with day in and day out supporters. Know that even the just kind of valid give and take in politics, if you're a Sanders supporter, is always going to be held to let's say a quadruple standard. And any games where we're trying to say now that, look, because, the Warren put out the email to her supporters telling them to, eat an extra piece of pie or something because they lost. So, we're not allowed to make a valid critique. That is actually patronizing and offensive to Warren supporters. And it shows how fundamentally, you're just not serious about beating Donald Trump. Because I don't, we're going to get into a primary, and when we're, casting Harry Potter spells, that's when he has to do a 72-hour cooling off period for Pocahontas jokes. We're doing something here. This is serious business, and I hope people can understand that. So, at any rate, they need to sharpen up their message on the healthcare thing. Does that make any sense, what I just went through? Try to be polite to your fellow people. Give candidates, and blue check marks, heck. And be aware that the triple standard is always in place. I think those are the three things.
Yeah, that's sort of where we're at now. They're going to take everything they can to use against us, and we just got to keep on making our case.
Right. And again, I feel it's so delicate because I don't want to discourage. I don't want. Be liberal towards, making your dunks on candidates, and be very charitable and compassionate about your fellow people.
It's simple.
Yeah.
It
is simple. But again, people are going to be, this is going to be the next phase now of look, it's a sign, particularly in the Warren case, the campaign is over. But this is going to be the next phase of a ton of people, look, they're not even serious to begin with. They're right wing. They're not going to support Sanders, and this is their excuse valve.
Yeah. That's 100% true. But, at the same time, I think we're getting to a point where, this kind of socialist movement is becoming more mainstream. And a lot of it has, some kind of cultural behavior and baggage that's very confusing to a lot of people who aren't very online and in this world. And, when they're able to snag things out of context and put them, on CNN or whatever, as ridiculous as it is, people don't understand the kind of jokes and humor that have become very popular in a lot of left socialist media and, big accounts online right now.
Absolutely.
So they're going to use that against us, basically.
They're definitely going to use it against us. And, that's another thing to kind of speak out of the seam. You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.